Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name's Jason Weil at AWS, and this is the June 28th, 2023 JupyterLab weekly call. We've got how many people on the call? 17 people participating on the call right now. And we've got an agenda on HackMD, and it looks like Frederick is first up on the agenda. Go ahead, Frederick.
Hello, everybody. I first want to congratulate Eric Gentry for officially becoming a JupyterLab Council member. So welcome to the team, and thanks a lot for all the contribution you have done so far and will do in the future, I'm sure.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Then I just copy paste the list of repository I briefly spoke about last week for cleaning up the JupyterLab GitHub organization. I think we can delay that for like additional discussion and stuff like that and go to the other point and maybe finish by that. I don't think. What do you think, Jason?
Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to unmute myself here. I'm okay with like proceeding with the archiving because, as someone noted, if we archive something in error, we can always like recover it later on, right?
Yeah, that's an undoable action.
Yeah, a two-way door, as people at my company like to say. And that's what Paul Ivanoff said as well. I mean, I meant to cite him for that.
The question also, it's probably about the message we should set on those repository. So like the good practice is to add on the README that this repository is going to be archived. Should we just say that, or should we like give a reason for archiving them? What can be different from one to the other?
Yeah, I've seen some repositories become archived in the past, and what I've noticed, and this isn't just a Jupyter thing, is to say, hey, this is no longer maintained. If you're interested in this project, please go here as a kind of alternative. So I like the idea of just saying, like, we've archived this repository because it's no longer being maintained. If you're interested in this technology, please follow up in like JupyterLab or on Team Compass or something like that. It may vary from repo to repo. I'm not sure. I'm looking at this. There's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different repos.
Yeah, there are one that's kind of easy. I think it's the shortcut UI. So it's part of JupyterLab since JupyterLab 3. I think it was kept open because it was outside. It was an external extension for JupyterLab 2, and because we officially support 2 major versions, that's probably the reason the repository was not archived. But now that JupyterLab 4 is out, then that one is an easy one, I think. And yeah, for the others, there are a couple of them that are experiments, like XKDC, the commenting one, the data explorer and stuff like that. So probably what I can propose to do is maybe open an issue on all of them and giving a period like something like 2 weeks period. And if there is nobody bumping on or reacting on that issue, then updating the README saying, okay, we are archiving this because there is no activity, and probably link to the Team Compass if people wants to reopen them and don't have rights for doing so.
Yeah, I like the idea of linking back to Team Compass issue 200, so that the message comes across as saying, we decided to do this, not I, Frederick, am unilaterally doing this. Like, we had a discussion, we agreed to do this. I sense consensus to move forward with the archiving.
Okay, so I write that down, and I take the action too. you. Feel free to move on, except if somebody wants to add or have any idea.
Okay. So those are, yeah, so Frederick, I'll open the issue. So you can take that as the action item. Thank you also, Paul, who I don't think is on the call right now, for your comment on that as well. Okay, so Frederick will take the action item on that. Fernando has another item on the agenda about a file corruption bug. Go ahead, Fernando.
Yeah, I filed it, and thanks. I saw you triage it, Jason, but I kind of wanted to flag it because I think that data corruption bugs should be escalated pretty rapidly. I mean, I don't know if I can reproduce it. It happened immediately. I posted the steps to reproduce, but the fact that the editor is literally like corrupting a file as you edit it is really worrisome. And I linked to another bug, which is not data corruption, but there's this inconsistency in file namings, and anything that has to do with file and data inconsistency worries me a lot. That one was really weird. The second one, I don't know how to reproduce. It literally started a brand new session. I had rebooted my computer, and then all of a sudden I make a brand new markdown file, and the name on the tab is the name of the last markdown file I had been editing before I rebooted my computer. So there was some weird bit of stale state. I don't know that one can lead to data loss, but it's just that anything that has to do with data inconsistencies, I think needs to be like escalated. We can't be losing people's data, and we have a long history of destroying people's data with the RTC machinery. I would like to kind of get away from that reputation. And the one with the editor is really bad. Like I was working on my taxes late. I was trying to edit a CSV file, and I'm like, what's going on? Am I like fat fingering this? Am I mistyping on? I was backspacing over these dollar signs, so a column on a CSV would be like numbers to load it into pandas, and then all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, this is wrong, and it's literally corrupting. Like as I edit the file, it corrupts it. It's just plain out misedits the data. I don't know how the editor can do that, but it's really, really bad. Like the fact that an editor like literally corrupts a file as you edit it that should not be possible in JupyterLab.
Yeah. So yesterday morning in triage, we saw a bug come in, and I just pasted it into the chat 14752, which is that a user on Windows with Chrome is reporting that markdown code blocks are getting corrupted when they're pasting. This is likely not the same issue, Fernando, but it is similar in effect, which is that you can see, unfortunately, the video is 2 minutes long. It really could have used some editing. So it's a little hard to follow, but long story short is that pasting in some of this information causes like the markdown to render without some of the data, which is a little concerning. I don't think that they are using RTC because they're using JupyterLab 4.0, and for that version, they need to actually install a separate package to use RTC.
Yeah, I couldn't replicate the problem without RTC on, though I didn't do a huge amount of testing. It would be, and I was busy and I was traveling, so I also didn't test with multiple browsers. I don't know, it's browser specific. I was on Firefox when it happened, but it did happen like 3 times. In fact, when it first happened, I thought it was me, and then later when I realized what was going on, I made a separate test case. I made a copy of the files. I anonymized the data. It was like my banking data, and it happened again. So it was pretty easy, and it's like you can make it happen with a 3-line file. So I don't know how to debug it, but I was just hoping to flag it for the team because I think data corruption is really not something we should be having out in the open. And sorry, Darian, about that.
No, that's cool.
I've been running into these over and over. So at this point,
Fernando, with your setup exactly how it is, can you pip uninstall Jupyter Collaboration and see if it happens in plain JupyterLab?
Yeah, let me try. I got it with Mamba, but or maybe it was with pip. I will give it a try, and you guys can carry on with other things. It'll take me like a minute or two.
Because that would be really helpful. Then we'll know whether it's coming from just pure the RTC package or if it's in core.
Let me try. I'll do that while we're talking.
Okay. Any other questions, comments about this one? I think like the inconsistencies in file names, we've seen some like file name issue bugs, and I agree that like, you know, an editor should fundamentally, preserve data and save files with a particular name. These are pretty fundamental things. So anybody with the availability and knowledge should please take a look at these as soon as possible. Okay. If
So
there
yeah,
are no,
we'll definitely put people on this right away.
thanks, Sylvan. All right. Tony is the next person up on the agenda here. Tony, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Jason. All right. I have two things I wanted to raise here. I gotta find an issue for this. So I've been spending all of my time in Notebook, and one of like I work for hours a day in a Notebook, right? So I'm a daily Notebook user. And there have been some major inconsistencies with the editing experience between it's in JupyterLab also, and Notebook version 7. So I imagine it's with the new editor changes. But if folks are going to be upgrading from MB Classic and then using the new Notebook, I think there should be some more consistent editing experience. I've started just a little running list of them, and I'm going to add it to the notes. But I think it would be really helpful. Anybody who is a Notebook user or spends time in Notebooks and has some sets of expectations, it would be good to get y'all's feedback on the experience that you're having and where some of those discomforts are happening. Like in the last Notebook meeting, some of the things I mentioned, Eric related to, but I think some other people might find some stuff, and it would probably be really good to get eyes on the editing experience. Cool. Has anybody else run across any inconsistencies that they've seen with the keyboard, or am I just making things up?
We've gotten quite a few bugs that have come in since JupyterLab 4 came out about keyboard shortcuts changing or no longer being available. One key thing to keep in mind, given the international nature of both this call and our user base, is try to avoid using shortcuts that depend on symbols. Because we just had a bug, for example, I didn't know this, that in the Latin American keyboard, a / doesn't have a key by itself. It's Shift-7 on a Latin American keyboard. So anything dependent on that is problematic. I think on a German keyboard, frankly, at some point, I'm going to need to have a box full of international keyboards to make sense of it all. But if you use letters A to Z, those are generally going to be okay. But we had a bug come in from somebody who had one of those trendy 60% keyboards, like one of these, but cooler because it has like a rainbow LED on it. That they lost the ability to use a keyboard shortcut because it's now a key that is not present. It's one of the 40% keyboard keys that are absent on there. So we have seen a few of those. I usually tag them with accessibility. So if you click on the tag accessibility, you should see that.
So I think that these are UX things, right? Because keyboard shortcuts aren't in the scope of accessibility. It's more that you should be able to navigate with the primary keys. But yeah, the trouble is, so yeah, I don't know how to. I think these are UX issues. They're not specifically accessibility issues. So that would probably be worth labeling there. So yeah, I guess that, yeah, you're right. I've noticed that some keyboard shortcuts like Control-D doesn't work. Some common ones that become normal sort of things in the editor experience that you don't even remember you're doing. So I guess it's a matter of reporting keyboard shortcuts and then some of the inconsistencies with the cursor. But yeah, if anybody can put eyes on that or collate some of those issues, maybe I don't know how to organize that. I
Yeah,
think these things are important for version 7 though.
I also want to give a shout out to the people on the notebook team for spinning out some of the issues in 6800 into separate issues. We saw those at triage yesterday. And that's really useful to identify like high priority, high velocity issues, especially ones that, more complexity.
Yeah, I think that's been mostly Tony's work. So kudos to Tony on that.
Yeah, thanks, Tony.
Thank you. Yeah, well, let's talk about that then. Cool. So there is a mega issue, and it's really neat because we've actually been chipping away at these things. One of these became a good first issue, and we got some contributors like in a short period of time. But Andre converted this larger issue into a milestone, and these are things. And man, yeah, if we get these things done, then I like to repeat this quote. Notebook 7 is better than JupyterLab and what should be recommended to persons with disabilities, and just needs a few small fixes to be fully supporting of low vision, colorblind, and ambulatory users. So this we won't be able to support everybody, but this will be a good start here. So if folks can take a look at this, some of these, I think some people have some better experience than others. Then if you can like take a look at some of these things and add any knowledge that you might have. I'm not asking people to solve it. I'm just asking people to put input in places that they know stuff. This issue's filed in Notebook, but a lot of these things are in JupyterLab. Some of them might be in Lumino. So any more information that we can get into solving these issues and triaging these issues would be super duper great. I did want to talk about 2 issues. Well, let's talk about, there's definitely one. Yes, I wanted to talk about 2 issues. One of them is not in this actually. So the first issue that I wanted to talk about is over in Notebook. It says that cell actions are not announced to the screen reader. Okay, so in the ARIA standard, there's ARIA Live, which is a updating and alert system for a screen reader. So with ARIA Live, you can set certain kinds of settings that when the announcement should be made. But ultimately, what we need is a visually hidden output somewhere in the cell, so that when a cell completes or when a cell's executed, we'll say cell whatever is executing, and then when it completes, it says cell whatever has finished completing, or there was an error. So like it's we basically need to be able to visually hide these outputs, and then they'll get announced to the screen reader. And this is a thing that nobody else is necessarily doing. But one of the questions I had is, where should this go? Yeah, something like that. So it's basically like, where would a good place for these things to go? I'm not sure the prompt area is it. But like, is this something that we could maybe add to the output group? Is it something we could put in the footer? But if anybody has any input in this, either speak your piece now or throw it in the issue, that would be really great.
Is there a known way of giving the markup that has this announcement enough metadata so that we can put it anywhere on the page? Because, for example, we have a status bar, and the status bar allows you to do stuff with it. Is there a way of saying this particular type of text added to the status bar is actually the kind of notification you're looking for?
So like, if we had something in the status bar that was like this many % of running cells are completed, then that would make sense, right? Because that would be like a dialogue or a progress bar. I think that right now, what we're asking for is at the cell resolution, so it might be a little bit too granular for the status bar, but I could see an aggregate happening on the status bar. You know, this is more like if you hit the keyboard and you don't have any haptics or audio, how do you know that, or sound with the keyboard, how do you know that the cell was submitted? So, you know, cell 2 submitted, cell 2 completed, you know, like something like that. They're really short messages that you typically send to these things. So they're not toast notifications. There's something a little bit extra.
Okay, I see some stuff coming through in the chat.
It's two
About,
conversations, right? It's
There's
two
a lot of
threads at the same time.
not sure if anybody wants to continue the conversation
I
on the
was just
record.
leaving background on this one that unfortunately I can't seem to replicate it right now, and I'm testing it actually with RTC on and multiple views, and it's not happening on the exact same setup. I hadn't updated my environment or anything, so I don't know what's going on, but I do worry, like the fact if you see these things once, you'll see them again. So at least I think we should keep an eye on it.
So one thing that someone has reported to us is that they saw that when typing like a line, a recently typed character appeared to disappear, and they weren't quite sure that it did happen or whether they mistyped or something, and so they told that to us. So this may be related because it seems to be in the characters preceding the place where things are being edited, but same thing, we weren't able to reproduce. So it looks real.
Yeah, and if it happens to me again, I'll try to also then make not just screenshots, but I'll try to make a screencast so that the specific keyboard actions are the same. Though I am pretty sure I was doing the same thing. I was backspacing over the characters. I was not editing with delete. I was editing with backspace. I tried to do the exact same thing that happened a few days ago when I filed the bug, and it's just not happening now. I'm sorry, but I was just leaving that in the chat for the team.
So one challenge would be for us to start exploiting the backlog of the log of patches that get stored in the Y stores in the backend, because we can replay them, but we haven't really developed a specific tool to actually replay the changes yet. Yeah, Tony, you had your hand raised. Or something. Yeah.
Or maybe not. Any other questions, comments on this topic?
Some of the I've noticed there are some situations that I haven't used the recent RTC because of spending a long time in RTC and then getting these weird highs and bugs. So this is, I think, an ongoing challenge, and good luck. But yeah, I don't know how that you go and report these weird states, because like I think Fernando has the best idea, which is the best you can record is like the state you got to, but like getting there is a real challenge sometimes, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, so
trying
this
to
is
do
where the
exactly what I
tool,
had done, and it's just not happening. I don't know why.
so every CRDT patch is actually recorded in a Y store. So we literally have a database of all of the patches during a session. So presumably we should be able to replay this and actually also to use this for journaling and stuff like that eventually as a feature, but first as a debugging tool for YJS and collaboration in JupyterLab.
Yeah, and for me, Tony, I totally hear you, because that's kind of my concern, right? That I keep using it, but I'm trying to use it first before I put it in front of a lot of students, right? And I just keep running into these weird things that I'm like, all right, this is still a little dangerous, right? And I want to put it in front of students. At Berkeley, many instructors have said this is exactly what we want to use for TAing, for support, for teamwork, etc. And I just keep like, wow, if I keep seeing these weird things, the moment I put 1,200 students in front of it, something is going to happen. And so, but but yeah, they tend to be somewhat Heisenbugs, and so it's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, just a simple. If we have these logs, even if we can't replay them, if they can be like manually inspected, or they can be inspected later once the tool arrives. If there was like a button or some other tool that could like extract those logs for submission. I don't know what format they're in, whether so people can, inspect them for privacy concerns before they submit them or not. But that would
Because it's that SQLite, the YStore SQLite database that has everything that's been happening, we're definitely not going to want to send that as a whole upload. There's people's entire document history may be there. They can also be huge if they haven't cleared it in a while. But the idea, it would be great to be able to say quickly, okay, here's how to view a portion of that log corresponding to this document. Please copy and paste this in a way that we can use it, or cut it out and export it in a way that makes it easy for the team to maybe just replay that section, the history for that document, rather than saying, oh, go find this like 50 megabyte giant SQLite database in your home directory and try to sanitize it, which obviously is just too much to ask for regular users. I know where it is, but I didn't even bother trying to find it because I figured it would be some giant mess of many documents at this point.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your contributions on this. Anything else to add on the editor behavior topic? Okay. Piyush. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just since there was a bit of a quieter, I did, since you mentioned the keyboard layout stuff with keyboard shortcuts, I did some previous work. I linked it in the chat previously. There's a pull request that is in draft stage on Lumino. It's basically where you can capture keyboard maps for users with non-US layouts.
Are you sure you sent that to everyone in the chat and not via DM? Because I'm not seeing that.
It's pretty far up.
Oh, okay.
That was a while ago.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Lumino, the pull request. Okay. Keyboard event code. Yeah, the fact that we're using scan codes makes this very painful. Like you have to use scan codes
that is a pull request that tries to solve it. But
yeah.
it does rely on having keyboard maps. But yeah, so use that as your own offline example.
Yeah, that would be very helpful because like there are dozens of keyboard layouts in the world. You have Windows keyboards, Mac keyboards, different, like there's no such thing as a Spanish language keyboard. There's one for Spain, Latin America, US, etc. So
yeah,
it's
the main point is that this could be either something you distribute, or you could have a user say like capture that on the live in JupyterLab for themselves if needed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. This is something that I was discussing. After time zones, keyboards are among the most difficult things for me as a front-end developer to diagnose. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else? I think Tony was about to say something.
Yeah, this I have one more issue that I wanted to bring up that is a big blocker for V7, I think. There is a issue open. It hasn't seen any kind of hits in like a month and a half or so, but it's on tab traps in JupyterLab. But once that one gets sorted, this isn't really tracked anywhere. I'm not sure if it's like put as a blocker on notebook or anything, but it really should be. And I was wondering if folks could put some eyes on this and maybe start driving this one forward. Yeah.
It's tracked in my head. But I did have a discussion last week with some folks. The main blocker on this is a design question around the focus state around cells. And so there are some ideas that I have and I'm gonna put those out I put those on the PR to like test them out and see if those can make it past review. Right now, the current issue is that the focus cell looks a bit heavy to some reviewers.
But the
we
tab
wanna,
trap's
we want
fixed.
to get it past reviewers.
The-
Yeah, but it's all together. Yeah, it was hard for me to separate those out. But it does fix tab traps, yes, in the notebook widget.
Is it possible to get this in without style fixes and do another style PR later on? Because like I can only test to the first cell right now. So it would be, is there a way to split up the style and the UX somehow?
I'll look
Or
into that,
serial.
but Sylvan has his hand raised.
Thanks. I put an agenda item in the end about this, but maybe this is a good time given the issue. So I just wanted to announce real quick that we have received some funding to work on accessibility with, and so they wanted us to scope this because it's only for 8 weeks of development. And so we decided to scope it to keyboard accessibility and to actually follow the thorough review of the Notebook 7 keyboard accessibility audit that Isabella did maybe a few months ago. And so we're aware of the PR of Gabriel, and we think that this is definitely in scope. And so depending on whether this is merged already when we get started on the work, we're definitely going to prioritize, working on this and getting this through and reviewed and, as good as possible if there is still review required.
This should go out with version 7 though. It feels like the timeline for it needing to get out is probably sooner than that, right?
So sorry, could you say that we should work on this before Notebook 7?
It should go out with Notebook 7. On the Notebook 7 JEP, we said accessibility was a focus. And this tab trap thing, regardless of the styling, is a usability problem. So to me, there's an open pull request right now that partially solves the problem and can move the needle forward. We can build on it later on. That's great that there's funding for that. But yeah, how do we push this one forward?
I do think it's possible to not add the focus styling. I didn't want to create one. I didn't want to solve one WCAG issue and then create another one at the same time. But maybe for the purposes of just getting it through review, that might be the best route forward.
Well, if this is basically ready, maybe this is worth having folks on our team, on this contract, do as much review as possible of this PR and see whether we can get it through within the time scale that was discussed earlier for Notebook 7. I don't know about that, so I think it's not really just my decision or anything.
I think that this will be a building block for a lot of the other work that y'all can do right now, but it's definitely it seems like it's in a further place than onboarding people onto it midway. But yeah, thanks for the consideration with this one, y'all.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Sylvan. So unfortunately, my teammate Piyush had to drop for another meeting, but I can present his agenda item on his behalf, on our team's behalf. So our team's been working on Jupyter AI. It's been presented at a couple of events, including JupyterCon, which is an interface between Jupyter and generative AI models. We are putting together a roadmap for issues that we're working on for the next quarter, which starts next week. So we have a list of milestones, which is linked from the agenda, but I can also drop it in the chat. 080 is the most recent release of Jupyter AI, and we've been planning out 090, 010, and any future releases. So if you've been looking at it, we've been getting some feedback from elsewhere in the community, but if you're at all interested in generative AI, we'd love if you could try it out. You can try it with many popular providers, including AWS, but not limited to it. And if you have particular suggestions or bugs that you found, we can get those prioritized. I see Sylvan has a hand raised.
Yeah, maybe I just wanted to get something on your radar. So we've started discussing having a chat UI as part of the collaboration package. So that would not be necessarily bound to the Jupyter AI, although you already have one in the Jupyter AI repository.
Yes.
I don't think we should need the AI part to get a chat.
Yes.
And so we are really experimenting at the moment around the chat protocol and everything, what should be done, but this should definitely be, we should definitely work together on this.
So Nicolas Brichet opened issue 205, which I just dropped into the chat, which is to effectively refactor the chat interface into a separate extensible part of JupyterLab. So exactly as Sylvan said, you wouldn't need to install Jupyter AI, just have chat. This is something we've talked about for quite some time, is the idea that like the chat is not just a two-party chat, you and JupyterNaut, the chatbot that we have for Jupyter AI, but instead we could have crosstalk and have multiple people chatting, and then only tag in JupyterNaut if we need the AI to answer a question. We've been playing around with this like on our own, like not in the context of JupyterLab, but almost like as a UI concept with our UX designer. We don't really have a whole lot to share with that yet, but that's something that we might want to discuss among our team next time we meet. I see Vidar has a hand up as well.
Yeah, that was for another point. I haven't gone through the issues. I don't know if this is a duplicate or not, but some models are don't really understand English or natural language very much, but understand code, right? So they're more like code completion stuff. So like they take your current cell and they will try to expand upon it, right?
Yep. Yeah, the
So
same with
currently
natural
that doesn't-
language. Even like some of them, like the Flan models that are available on Hugging Face, don't really answer questions, but it's more like if you say something like, what is the capital of Norway, it wouldn't answer it. But if you say the capital of Norway is space, and then it will autofill the, you know, what it thinks is the correct answer, at least.
Yeah, so the main point is there isn't currently a UX or a way of doing those, I think.
Yeah.
Or it's a little bit tricky, at least, because if you use the current magics, for example, if you say like, oh, the format should be code, because code in, code out, right? It adds a bunch of English to the prompt, whatever.
Yeah. The admittedly naive intention with the prompts was that the same prompt could be used with any model. And what we're seeing is exactly as you described, Vidar, that the same prompt given to 10 different models might work as intended in like 2 of them. And the others, you don't get something sensible back. So I think like prompt templates as a function of the model might be something useful to add. I don't know whether we have that in there. If you don't see that in the issues list, please open that up. Update prompts for locally installed models. There's an issue 226 that came out of the work that Mike has been doing about GPT for all for locally installed models that effectively says the current prompts don't work well with locally installed models.
I'll put a comment there and ask if that's the same. And if not,
Okay.
I can create another issue. Thanks.
Yeah, I think improving like the prompt engineering and kind of tweaking things. What we're also seeing is that, you know, right now, especially because we're tied to LangChain, we're biased towards text to text as our format. You give the model text, it gives you text, but text to image, text to video, text to audio, image to text, these are all popular use cases for generative AI, and we're not really well set up for those. So we invite everyone in the community, no matter how familiar you are with either generative AI or Jupyter AI. I see some good ideas coming through in the chat, but the chat's gonna disappear when this meeting does. So if you want to preserve that in our issue list, please open that up. We've got a small team, but we're also willing to, you know, accept a lot of good feedback from elsewhere in the community. Sylvan says Hugging Chat does respond to questions. Yeah, the Hugging Chat, Hugging Face stuff, we're following pretty closely because Hugging Face is like a partner of AWS. I don't know the exact business relationship, but that's one of our larger providers is the Hugging Face Hub. Because Hugging Face is an independent company. I believe they're a French company, in fact, and they work with, they have many models that are available. Okay, any other questions, comments, discussions? Believe we've reached the end of the agenda because Sylvan is next, but we did the accessibility funding discussion before this one. So I think we're good unless you have anything to add there. We are at about a quarter till the hour. If anyone wants to have off the record discussion, I can end the recording once I figure out how to end the recording. Okay, I'm going to end the recording in 3, 2,